Today I'm going to be reviewing the Icarus painting board by Esther Roy. It is the largest board that she and her husband make, and it is 28 inches by 22 inches and has a completely warm surface, no cool surface. It came very well packaged, and it was a lot bigger and heavier than I anticipated that it would be. It was kind of hard to get out of the box, but it had very well written instructions on how to get it out of the box and how to set it up. It has a strap on the back side of it, and as you can see here, I have strapped it around and clipped it in the back on my larger easel so that I can sit and keep it at an angle when I use it. I purchased the Icarus board in order to make backgrounds a little bit easier for me. As many of you know, I do colored pencil drawings, and when I'm doing the background, it takes many layers and very tedious work, and I was hoping to save some of my wrist action by purchasing this board to help me make those backgrounds. And the way this board is going to help me do backgrounds is that it actually heats up and melts the medium that you use so that it is easier to blend and spread with less friction, less pressure, and less work with your wrist. You can see on the side of the board there is an on-off switch and a cord that comes out that just plugs into the wall, and it has a minimum to maximum setting at 1 to 10. For this review, I have kept it on the warmest setting, which is the maximum, just to see what it does on the warmest. I know I can always cool it off by turning it down, so I wanted to see what the warmest setting would do with the different pencils that I use. So the first thing I did was put a piece of Stonehenge white paper on the Icarus board and opened up the little pack of magnets. It comes with these earth magnets, and they're very strong, powerful magnets, and they were very easy to snap onto the board and hold my paper down. The Icarus board came with some samples, and I'm starting with a Neo Pastel. So what I did was divide up this piece of paper with all the different mediums that I was going to use and label them so that you will be able to see what I am using and how they each are affected. The Luminance Pencil, I had my own. It also came with one Luminance Pencil in the Icarus board packaging, which was really nice to have that sample. Especially for those of you who don't already use Luminance. Now you'll know what it feels like on the Icarus board if you buy the Icarus board. So I labeled them all, and then it also came with some other samples of some Prismacolor Art Six, and they came in a little bag. I was really impressed with how many little sample items it came with, because if you're new to using this board, you have no idea what you're going to use with it when you first get it, other than the few videos that you see online. I also have some Derwent Color Soft and some Derwent drawing pencils that I wanted to use on the board just to see if they work. They are wax. So I've gone and labeled each one of the different mediums that I'm using as whether they're wax and oil. The only oil-based product I'm using today in this review is Neo Pastel, and they are oil. And this is Stonehenge paper by Legion paper. It's the white. It's one of my favorite papers. I also love the colored pad that comes in their little multi-pack. So just a plug for Legion paper because it's awesome. So I started with Luminance, and I really expected that the light layer on the warm pad, on the warm Icarus board, would completely melt the Luminance, but it didn't. In fact, you see that I'm putting a light touch, and it was really, I didn't notice much difference than when I used them on cold paper. So I was kind of confused, and I kept putting multiple layers and trying to press a little bit harder. It did cover really well. I'm not sure if that was because it was the Luminance, and I've always used them on Stonehenge paper and I like them. But I went ahead and used a blending stump, and I started to kind of press it in on that light, and it didn't seem to melt. So I put an extra layer of Luminance. I kind of like piled it up and kept putting more, and I used a little harder pressure, and it didn't take real hard pressure to get it. Just took layers, multiple layers. As soon as I started getting multiple layers, I could see that it did blend easy, and it was pretty good coverage, and I thought, well, it definitely blended better than it did on a cold surface. So I could see that it was a little bit of help. At this point, while it was good, I still wasn't totally impressed with the board with the Luminance, and so I was kind of wondering, will I use this with Luminance? It seemed to eat my Luminance like crazy, and that even though it wasn't real easy to blend and wasn't totally melted, It seemed like my pencils were getting shorter really fast. So I'm not sure that I would use Luminance in the future, but I still had just started using the product, so I wasn't sure if it would work with the Icarus board or not. Kept piling it on and layering it and blending it, and the thicker it got, the happier I was with the result, because the warmth underneath did seem to really help it melt once it got piled on. But being expensive, I was a little worried about that. So next I used the Neo Pastel, and it was very light touch, and I noticed that it just went on really easy. It just like kind of almost just melted under my fingertips, which is exactly what I expected whenever I was using the Luminance, but didn't get that result. So the Neo Pastel just like, it felt like it did use a lot of the Neo Pastel. I wasn't sure how much was gonna have to take to put it on, but then I realized it was really thick and pretty and smooth, and you couldn't see any of the paper. And I used the blending stump to kind of touch the blue and put it onto the pink, and it was very easy to transfer the color, to blend the two colors together, to go over the blue with the pink, to go around it and kind of make a purpley color. It was very smooth and rich and almost like putting paint on, and it felt exactly what I kind of had imagined using this Icarus board for. So I was pretty happy with that. Then I moved on to the Prismacolor Pencil, and they're a wax-based pencil. So I also expected a amazing result, and I started to draw with them, and they felt a little rough. I was kind of surprised. I was like, wait, these are wax, but they felt a little rough. They felt rougher actually than the Luminance when I was putting them on, and I did have to press pretty hard to get the color, but they were smooth. But I felt like I had to put too much pressure on it, and I didn't expect that because they are such a soft pencil. So I continued to put it over and over, layer it, and then use the blending stump to see if I could get them to blend together. They blended well. Overall, I was still, while the result looked really nice, once I was done layering and blending, I wasn't sure that I was comfortable with that amount of pressure, since the whole purpose of getting the Icarus board is to relieve the pressure that my hand has to put on the paper. That's a lot of work for me, and so I wasn't quite as impressed with the result, but it did work. So next I used the Neocolor 1. They are wax-based. The difference between the Neocolor 1 and the Neocolor 2 is the Neocolor 2 are water-based, or water-soluble. But the Neocolor 1 went on amazingly well, just like the Neo Pastel. It just unbelievably just blended right under my fingertips. It was like crazy. It just melted. It felt good like it did in the Neo Pastel. And I used a couple of too dark colors. I probably should have used a lighter color, but they did blend very well. And overall, it felt very much like the Neo Pastel. So next I used the Prismacolor Art Six that were included in the sample. I had never heard of them. I started to apply them, and I immediately noticed they were rough and really very crumbly. They really started to like crumble a lot and leave like little specks all over the paper. I had to press pretty hard. There were pretty poor coverage, and this is at the highest heat setting. So even though they're wax, the Art Six I was very kind of confused with why they weren't just melting like some of the other products. I used the pencil, the blending stump to blend, and once I did that, then it was a better coverage and they looked pretty good, but I was kind of unimpressed with them overall. Next I used the Derwent drawing pencils, and I started to like just put them on immediately, realized it was really rough. It was probably one of the roughest, and I was really concerned that these probably would not be a pencil that I used with the Icarus board. I had to press very, very hard. They had very poor coverage, and when I started to try to use the stump, I was like, it was hard to blend. It just kind of felt like a mess. So I decided that the Derwent drawing pencils were probably not the best pencil for the Icarus board, but I wanted to move on to the Derwent Color Soft and try them, thinking they might be softer, but technically Derwent drawings seem a lot softer to me. So just like I suspected, the Derwent Color Soft were actually more difficult to use. I had to press very hard. I didn't really see much difference between using them on a cold board and using them on the Icarus board. So then after I used them all, I decided to go back and give them each a star between 1 to 5 and see, or 0 to 5, and see what I thought. And I gave the Neocolor 1s a 5. I gave the Neo Pastel a 5. And then looking at the others in order, I gave the Luminance, I gave it a 4 star. and the Prismacolor Wax a 4-star, because they did cover and blend even though I had to press a little harder. The Prismacolor Art 6 got 3 stars, the Derwent Drawing got 2 stars, and the Derwent Color Soft got 1 star. Overall, the Neo Pastel and the Neo Color 1 were my 2 favorite to use with this Icarus board. The Prismacolor Pencil was too crumbly. The Prismacolor Art 6 was poor coverage and crumbly. And then the Derwent Drawing, they were very poor coverage as well. Also had to push really hard, and they didn't seem to blend. I was not looking for things that did not blend well, and I was not looking for anything that would require me to use a lot of pressure with my hand. So at this point I took the Prismacolor Pencil just to verify that I was worried about the pressure, and indeed there was just too much pressure to have to use that Prismacolor Pencil. So I decided that it wouldn't really help me. I also use Polychromos as a general rule all the time, and they are oil based. So I was looking at the Neo Pastel, looking at the Neo Color, looking at the Prismacolors, all the different options that I had, comparing which ones were poor coverage and which ones weren't. I really chose the Neo Pastel or the Neo Color 1, and since I'm using Polychromos, I really think that for me the Neo Pastel oil-based sticks are going to be the best thing for the background. They really covered nicely. They were able to completely melt. They aren't too expensive. They aren't as expensive as the Luminance that I used, and so they're like half price compared to the Luminance. And when I went back and used the Luminance again, I noticed that they were a little crumbly, but they did blend easily, and they had good coverage, but still a little bit too much pressure and a little bit too expensive to waste on the Icarus board. So overall, I really think the Polychromos work great with the Neo Pastel. I used the Polychromos black pencil to see if I could draw right on top, and I was really impressed. I was able to draw right on top of the Neo, after cooling the board, right on top of the Neo Pastels. Now I cooled the board off, I turned it off when I was drawing with this one here, and it just was easy. And so for me, this is probably going to be my best use. It will be a mixed media piece whenever I do use it, because Neo Pastels are not considered a colored pencil. But for me, the ultimate result is way more important than the tools that I use to get that result. So if I can save my hand and create an amazing piece of art, I don't care that it's 100% colored pencil. But if you're interested in 100% colored pencil, you might want to consider that. But overall, for my use, I loved the Icarus board, and I'm very happy with it. I'm very glad that I ordered it. I think it's going to provide me with some less pressure for backgrounds, less work on my wrists, and I think that if you're looking for that, then the Icarus board is a very good product.